Hey guys, Lord Naren White here, the Holy Ghost, the one true God. Back with you with the next video in my series reading White Fang by Jack London. Without further ado, returning to White Fang as read by Lord Naren White. White Fang resisted, and he could feel the jaws shifting their grip, slightly relaxing and coming together again in a chewing movement. Each shift brought the grip closer to his throat. The bulldog's method was to hold what he had, and when opportunity favored, to work in for more. Opportunity favored when White Fang remained quiet. When White Fang struggled, Cherokee was content merely to hold on. The bulging back of Cherokee's neck was the only portion of his body that White Fang's teeth could reach. He got hold toward the base where the neck comes out from the shoulders, but he did not know the chewing method of fighting, nor were his jaws adapted to it. He spasmodically ripped and tore with his fangs for a space. Then a change in their position diverted him. The bulldog had managed to roll him over on his back and still hanging on to his throat, and was on top of him. Like a cat, White Fang bowed his hind quarters in, and with the feet digging into his enemy's abdomen above him. He began to claw with his long tearing strokes. Cherokee might well have been disemboweled had he not quickly pivoted on his grip and got his body off White Fang and at the right angles to it. There was no escaping that grip. It was like fate itself, and as inexorable. Slowly it shifted up along the jugular. All that saved White Fang from death was the loose skin of his neck and the thick fur that covered it. This served to form a large roll in Cherokee's mouth, the fur of which well nigh defied his teeth. But bit by bit, whenever the chance offered, he was getting more of the loose skin and fur in his mouth. The result was that he was slowly throttling White Fang. The latter's breath was drawn with greater and greater difficulty as the moments went by. It began to look as though the battle were over. The backers of Cherokee waxed jubilant and offered ridiculous odds. White Fang's backers were correspondingly depressed and refused bets of 10 to 1 and 20 to 1. The one man was rash enough to close a wager of 50 to 1. This man was Beauty Smith. He took a step into the ring and pointed his finger at White Fang. Then he began to laugh derisively and scornfully. This produced the desired effect. White Fang went wild with rage. He called up his reserves of strength and gained his feet. As he struggled around the ring, the 50 pounds of his foe ever dragging on his throat, his anger passed on into panic. The basic life of him dominated him again, and his intelligence fled before the will of his flesh to live. Round and back again, stumbling and falling and rising, even uprearing at times on his hind legs, and lifting his foe clear of the earth, he struggled vainly to shake off the clinging death. At last he fell, toppling backward, exhausted, and the bulldog promptly shifted his grip, getting in closer, mangling more and more of the fur-folded flesh, White Fang more severely than ever. Shouts of applause went up for the victor. Cries of Cherokee, Cherokee. To this, Cherokee responded. By vigorous wagging of the stump of his tail, but the clamor of approval did not distract him. There was no sympathetic relation between his tail and his massive jaws. The one might wag, but the other held their terrible grip on White Fang's throat. It was at this time that a diversion came to the spectators. There was a jingle of bells. Dog mushers' cries were heard. Everybody save Beauty Smith looked apprehensively, the fear of the police strong upon them, but they saw up the trail and not down 2 men running with sled and dogs. They were evidently coming down the creek from some prospecting trip. At sight of the crowd, they stopped their dogs and came over and joined it, curious to see the cause of the excitement. The dog musher wore a mustache, but the other, a taller and younger man, was smooth-shaven, his skin rosy from the pounding of his blood and the running in the frosty air. White Fang had practically ceased struggling. Now and again he resisted spasmodically and to no purpose. He could get little air, and the little grew less and less under the merciless grip that ever tightened. In spite of his armor of fur, the great vein of his throat would have been long since been torn open, had not the first grip of the bulldog been so low down as to be practically on the chest. It had taken Cherokee a long time to shift that grip upward, and this had also tended further to clog his jaws with fur and skinfold. In the meantime, the abysmal brute in Beauty Smith had been rising into his brain and mastering the small bit of sanity that he possessed at best. When he saw White Fang's eyes beginning to glaze, he knew beyond doubt that the fight was lost. Then he broke loose. He sprang upon White Fang and began to savagely kick him. There were hisses from the crowd and cries of protest. But that was all. While this went on and Beauty Smith continued to kick White Fang, there was a commonplace in the crowd. There was a commotion in the crowd. The tall young newcomer was forcing his way through, shouldering men right and left without ceremony or gentleness. When he broke through into the ring, Beauty Smith was just in the act of delivering another kick, all his weight on one foot, and he was in a state of unstable equilibrium. At that moment, the newcomer's fist landed a smashing blow full in his face. Beauty Smith's remaining leg left the ground, and his whole body seemed to lift in the air as he turned over backwards and struck the snow. The newcomer turned upon the crowd. "You cowards!" he cried. "You beasts!" He was in a rage. Himself, a sane rage. His grey eyes seemed metallic and steel-like as they flashed upon the crowd. Beauty Smith regained his feet and came toward him, sniffling and cowardly. The newcomer did not understand. He did not know how abject a coward the other was, and thought he was coming back intent on fighting. So with a "You beast!" he smashed Beauty Smith over backward with a second blow in the face. Beauty Smith decided that the snow was the safest place for him, and lay where he had fallen, making no effort to get up. "Come on, Matt, lend him a hand," the newcomer called the dog musher who had followed him into the ring. Both men bent over the dogs. Matt took hold of White Fang, ready to pull when Cherokee's jaw should be loosened. This the younger man endeavored to accomplish by clutching the bulldog's jaws in his hands and trying to spread them. It was a vain undertaking. As he pulled and tugged and wrenched, he kept exclaiming with every expulsion of breath, "Peace!" The crowd began to grow unruly, and some of the men were protesting against the spoiling of the sport. But they were silenced when the newcomer lifted his head from his work a moment and glared at them. "You damn beasts!" he finally exploded, and went back to his task. "It's no use, Mr. Scott. You can't break 'em apart that way," Matt said at last. The pair paused and surveyed the locked dogs. "Ain't bleedin' much," Matt announced. "Ain't got all the way in yet. But he's liable to any moment," Scott answered. "There, did you see that? He shifted his grip in a bit." The younger man's excitement and apprehension for White Fang was growing. He struck about the head savagely again and again, but that did not loosen the jaws. Cherokee wagged the stump of his tail in advertisement that he understood the meaning of the blows, but that he knew he himself was in the right and only doing his duty by keeping his grip. Why won't some of you help?" Scott cried desperately at the crowd. But no help was offered. Instead, the crowd began sarcastically to cheer him on and showered him with facetious advice. "You'll have to get a pry," Matt counseled. And we'll go ahead and stop there for this week. As usual, I want to say thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoy. Please like, comment, and subscribe, as it greatly helps the channel. Light be with you all. Take care, and thanks again.